Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. Today, we have a real startup expert, really broad background, Danielle Rodriguez. And Danielle, I'm going to let you explain your startup background. But what we're going to be talking about today is what makes for a successful startup journey. And I will say something about your background. There's a lot of success in your background, but we learn from what? Failures too. We've all been involved in projects and startups that didn't go right, but we learn a tremendous amount from that. So that whole wealth of experience is what you're going to bring to us today. And I didn't want to take any particular thunder, especially the startup that you're basically the chief growth officer, co-founder, and on the board of a company called Luxembourg. So we'll edit that a little bit right there. The Luxembourg House of Web3, right? Yeah. But let me turn it over to you to explain a little bit more about your background.
Okay, thank you very much, Steven. Very happy to stay here with you and also the audience. And then, I'm Spanish, you can guess, because of my Asian. I've been always working, let's say, for corporate, but 4 years ago, I decided to break my comfort zone. Just before starting, I can wear different hats because I work as engineer, project manager, head of department, marketer, product, sales, business. And then, basically 4 years ago, I decided to break my comfort zone. And because in the meantime, some companies, they start to reach me out through LinkedIn. And I mean, you know me a little bit better, okay? I'm the kind of person that if somebody's testing me, even if it's for selling me something, okay, always I will take my time to reply. And then, some individuals start sending me the pitch decks. And then I said, okay, why no? Let's have a look. And then, sometimes eventually I said, okay, let's go a little bit further. Okay, let's set up a call. And then we check the pitch deck. Most of those, of course, they were, very early stage. Okay, but then, it's a very good learning. And then eventually, as I said, I started off collaborating with several venture capitals as deal partner, venture scout. And then in order to support them also with the due diligence, as I said, a little bit beyond that I used to be. And then during 3 years and a half, more or less, I spring up 200 pitch decks, which gave me a little bit of traction about that. And eventually, of course, I enrolled to an accelerator in Singapore when remote because I invested in Luxembourg. I should start off from there. And then, we tried to create a decentralized application, voting system, basically blockchain, Polkadot. We failed, but we learned quite a lot in whole process, okay? Because I had the opportunity to meet a very interesting people. And then, I said, I cannot be back to corporate because, I think should be easier. Okay, I love the hard way. And then I enrolled to the Luxembourg University for a project was already up and running, a prototype research from several PhD. And then, they were looking for a CEO, a person who can wear different hats. Again, we are back to the beginning. And then eventually it was a really good experience because, it was a challenge because it was not actually a product itself, was a plugin of another product, which made more difficult. And also at the very beginning, the equity share was not the most accurate according to venture capital because, when you are having somebody on board that is getting more than 20% in early stage, you can be Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, or whoever, is assessed that nobody will bet on you in next, let's say, stages like Series E, B, C, because, the equity, the cap table is already kind of spoiled. And then, this is, a little bit about me. Sorry if I extended a little bit longer, but just, to know me a bit more. Thank you.
Well, fantastic. So I'm going to dive right in and I'm going to ask, some of this might seem kind of an obvious question, but it's really not. The biggest challenge of scaling from zero, right? From starting from scratch.
Yeah. This is a very good question, Steven. Thank you very much. Because actually, I remember I have an analysis professor in the university. He used to say the white paper syndrome. You need to start from zero something, which you basically don't have the way, right? To start properly, to say, okay, this is, the path I should tackle. And then as I said, this is basically, so hard because you said, where I should start? Of course, where you should start to escalate it? First of all, if you are scaling, it means you already have the product, the MVP. You test the product market fit, which is for me, very important. Is what I learned, one of my learnings. Like, if you want success, is key the beta testing, which is part of the product market fit. It means don't think about what are you like, to be, is what the others they are expecting, what the need is you are covering. Okay. And then for me, to have the product market fit is key, is one of them. Also as well, the communication channels, because if you want to scale, depending on the environment, the context, you will build the type of product, okay, is key, to decide which one, or especially, in plural, you are going with. And then, of course, the go-to-market strategy. Now we speak about go-to-market, especially there are a lot of AI tools that, they are making part of the job. But for me, those three pillars are key in order to scale, a company, from zero, let's say, because again, you are scaling because the company is already created. And also, of course, the product, you have a little bit of traction, but at some point, of course, it's not flat. You want to go up, and then therefore, okay, you need the right tools and instrument properly.
I love the idea. Getting product market fit is hard, right? It's not an easy thing to do. And you have to have enough people that are validating that product market fit. We all want to say the very first time that somebody pays, we're like, we got it, right? Well, it's not quite that easy, right? And we can all, I've never met a founder, and me being a founder as well, that didn't fall in love with our own ideas. And just we're racing ahead. Like we're way ahead of the market in terms of product market fit because we just know it's going to work. And in fact, that mentality of, oh my goodness, as soon as somebody in our ICP, our target, when they understand what we're doing, oh, the floodgates are going to open, right? They just got to know what it is. But we know it takes so much more, right? If it just took great tech to create a great startup, then there would have been a heck of a lot more successful startups in this world. So that kind of leads to my next question, right? Which is, what are the major hurdles to gaining like traction in the marketplace, right? That initial product market fit is huge, but gaining that traction is a whole nother thing, right?
Yeah, it's super important because you mentioned, thank you very much, a very important element that, the first customer, I really remember like 5 years ago when I was working in one of the projects, somebody said to me, Danny, even if it's 10 euros, $10, doesn't matter. It's psychological. It means somebody is interested in your product, okay? And once, okay, you get in, okay, all the others is a kind of, a snowball, okay, it's rolling, okay, you will have it eventually, right? Okay, and then I think it's kind of, as I said, psychological, okay, that, okay, your product, somebody likes your product. Why not to the others? Okay, and then you are back to the research, product market fit, okay, what are you doing? How can you improve, okay? And then, this is, let's say, really complicated, okay? And then, back, of course, to the question you just formulated about how to generate, let's say, the traction. This is, let's say, key as well, because now, as far as I can see, in this, let's say, there is the bull market, the bear market, VCs, they were betting on the team. The most important slide always was the team, because you have the guts, basically, okay, this is the team, this is interesting. But now, after this bear market, the most important, as far as I can see, maybe I'm wrong, but this is what I noticed, is the KPIs. The KPIs slide, okay? What are you, why you should go for your product? And then in the KPIs are the traction, which is, let's say, how many customer paid do you have? How many revenue? And this, to reach there, this gap is really tremendous because startups, with the 3 Fs, family, fools, and friends, they take it off, but at some point there is this gap to get the traction to get the next level. And there is something that as well, my partner in the firm, because, I work for the Luxembourg House of Web3, but also in an independent law firm. Always we discuss that when we are talking with the startups. I want to fundraise. Okay, why rather fundraise? You have the tools and the instruments. You don't go to get the first customers. Do you have the MVP, right? Yeah. You already did the research, therefore the product market fit, because the MVP is coming after that. Yeah. You have the channels to sell because now everything, let's say, is for free between brackets, because we are paying the several subscription until premium. Then go to get customers. Don't wait for others, let's say, to get the funding, because you will, let's say, let them part of your equity, okay, and you want to be scalable, is also your first question, okay, will be tougher if your cap table is already busy, because will be really, and also on top of that, you have, let's say, different individuals or companies, okay, in order to reach an agreement is hard, okay. And then for me, the point, to get the traction is basically that is like, it's part of the go to market process, okay. Like, okay, the product is ready to sell it, it's fine, I trust on it, okay, but you need to see beyond, and therefore, let's say, to bid for the proper go-to-market strategy. And then if the go-to-market strategy, let's say, is kind of accurate, the traction will come along. I think, this is, what I'm really thinking, and then, of course, for the go-to-market, there are many theories, of course. You have the famous, let's say, funnel on marketing, you have now the loops, and then you can follow certain theories, but eventually is the product you want to sell, the audience, what is the need, okay, and then of course, to sometimes a little bit of lucky. Why no? Because especially now if you notice, even during the COVID outbreak, is the saying that when there is rough times, okay, also opportunities arise. And then, there were especially, those tech companies as companies, take it off, during that moment, because they spot really the need. They went in the proper moment, accurate, let's say, time for the go-to-market, and this assess in order to get some track.
So I want to unpack a lot of stuff that you said. One of the things that you said is that you started out with like KPIs, right? And, really the number one KPI is how many customers and how much revenue.
Yeah.
I've never met anybody in my life that didn't want to join a winning team, right? A VC or private equity company. They're going to love the team. They're going to love the technology, but they're going to be, okay, show me some success, right? Show me that you got that initial success, and my investment is just going to help you, expand on that quite dramatically. And that's really, going from product market fit to initial success to market leadership.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of, that's what they're looking for, right? They're investing in you, knowing that 9 out of 10 investments they're going to walk away from, right? They're looking for the unicorn, right? Yeah. So how do we move from product market fit to initial success to market leadership as that kind of third stage?
Yeah, for that as well, because thank you again, because I think we are, let's say, addressing the different steps. I think as well, is the company culture we would like to decide, because there is this famous saying that surround that people that is smarter than you. This is the right way, right? Because there are some individuals with a big ego and they want to be the smartest of the team, the hard work. No. This is absolutely a mistake, okay? You have around you, let's say, individuals that they perform better than you in certain aspects or industries, okay, I mean, for sure, there is a high likelihood, in order to success. And then for me, this element not mentioned before is the company culture, the team you have around in order to move on. This is, because sometimes, now we are in this AI hype or era, whatever it's called, also, Web3. And then sometimes we forget the most important, the human side. Okay, and therefore you have, let's say, a group around you that you are setting the vision, which is also, very important, is before all what we discuss, okay, a very solid vision, and you set up this kind of company culture, you have a high likelihood to move on. A very good example, OpenAI. OpenAI, they were a group of engineers, you see the videos, okay, I don't know them personally, okay, but looks like, okay, before all those, let's say, splits, they had a very good relationship because they were working until, late time most probably. They were aligned on the vision. They were, let's say, convinced and confident, okay, let's move on, okay, we're going to make it, and you see the outcome, okay? So, of course, every single of them, is trying to get his or her own way. But the truth is, like, they created one of the super big companies, okay, and still growing, and they are part of Microsoft. Yeah, we know already a story which is on internet, but then this is basically what I'm thinking about your question.
I'm really glad you brought up culture, because culture is one of those things that a lot of time we can say, that's that plaque on the wall with the company values, or that we put a page up on the website, right? Nobody remembers it after that, right? Nobody, it's like, what, but that's the way most companies treat a company culture. But a company culture, if done right, fosters not only retention of the best employees, so high performance teams, but helps
Yeah.
you retain those, like OpenAI. Oh my gosh, right? So that's an ultimate example, right? But you want employees engaged in recommending others to come in. You want to retain your best, right?
Yeah.
When you started at the beginning and you said it used to be that the VCs and the private equity firms, they were looking for the team, right? They haven't stopped, right? Once that product market fit and that initial success is there and we like the technology, it's the team that's going to take it forward, right? So the key is, how do you attract and retain these high performance teams? And I actually had the privilege of bringing onto the podcast a PhD, chief people officer, and he did his whole doctorate literally on company culture and how it impacts long-term sustained growth in the business.
Mhm.
And engaged employees ultimately make for engaged clients, which makes for success in the business, like, is a way to really simplify this. So I just wanted to underscore what you said there, right? That
Yeah.
how important that culture is. But I want to talk about something else that we talked about in a previous conversation, because there's a whole nother stage, which is sustaining our growth, right? Like keeping it going, because most companies in every industry have 15, 20, 25 different competitors,
Yeah.
especially in tech. I mean, ChatGPT is writing code these days, right? Product development and rolling out new feature sets and everything. It used to be that we could create sustainable growth and competitive advantage. Now we roll something out, somebody else is going to have copied it very quickly,
Yeah, of course.
right? So how
Totally,
do
yeah.
we stay on top? How do we maintain that growth?
Yeah. No, this is of course, let's say, a topic nowadays. Thank you, Steven, because he's as well. I am back the typical saying. Okay, it's hard to reach the top, but most let's say key or important, let's say, to keep it steady, right? Because the position, and then yeah. But for instance, what's happened with the coming back to OpenAI, or let's say another startup? Okay, they were early adopters, okay, or innovators. Let's say not adopters, innovators on that, and then of course very quickly or rapidly, others, let's say, startups or competitors, they replicate the business model, okay, and they try, let's say, to reach out the same goals, and then basically, let's say, it's the same. We are living in a very dynamic world. It's not like you invent something, okay, and then it will last for 10, 15 years, okay. Within what you have it, okay, you need to sometimes even to pivot from one pivot career. I mean, the good example is, as far as I remember, I hope I am not making any mistake, is Kodak, the photographer company, okay. They went through bankruptcy, and then eventually they pivot themselves, okay, and eventually, let's say, they came back. It means, okay, they didn't stick also, to the business itself, which was photograph. They said, okay, the world is changing, okay, and then we need to adapt. What are the customer needs? And then with those companies, in order to sustain the growth or even keep growing, is of course, to bid on innovation, okay, and then as well, this is very important, as you mentioned before, to avoid the turnover, on the team. Like, let's guess, I mean, I will put a personal example, right? Because when I had my startup of the University of Luxembourg, we were, let's say, calculating the different salaries. And of course, the technical person could have 30, 40% salary up than I. And I was the CEO, theoretically, the responsible hours. But I said, this is the person I need to keep on my team, because if he's leaving, the project is gone. And then you need to assume that even if you are, let's say, running the show, that there are key elements and actors that you need to maintain. How? Of course, salary is important. Of course, let's be completely honest. We are working for money, but also, let's say, if you are working in a startup, let's say equity, treat, let's say, that person as is part of the company, therefore will be more involved, because he knows if the company is growing, he will grow. And therefore as well, create not a toxic culture, as I said before several times, let's say, a proper company culture. And then, try to set the vision and eventually, like a little family. Maybe it sounds kind of sentimental, but it is what it is, because when you are working in a startup, it's not a corporate 8 to 5. you are spending 24/7 in certain stage of the project, more than time with your wife, your family, with your friends, with your children. Okay, it means you need, let's say, to engage properly everyone and to have a proper atmosphere. And then is, the way you are moving on. Of course, at some point, everything is documented. You can, could be a kind of turnover. But then in order to keep growing, or at least, to keep, on the top, innovation, team, and also, let's say, vision according the times are you running, let's say, or the dynamically. It's like, no, my product is the best. Okay, why your product is the best? No, because last year we have a revenue. Okay, it's fine. Was last year. But this year you have rather two competitors, you have four with 20% less with the service they are offering, similar to us, what we should do. And then, to pivot is not reject what are you doing or a step back. To pivot is a smart, let's say, movement, okay, taking into consideration, let's say, the possibilities of the scope you can, let's say, tackle.
So here's what I want to ask you in this, because I hear a reoccurring theme. And, it's like how much we work there, the culture of where we work, the team, what we work with, right? That the environment is directly related to the outcome, right?
Yeah.
Just like, you take, as kids, our environment and how we were brought up is directly related to the outcome of how we produce in life overall, right?
Yeah.
There was, back to your point on culture, there was a chief revenue officer, chief marketing officer that came onto the podcast, and the CRO, he was the CRO of the year. Okay.
Yeah.
And we came on and we started talking about what you are about company culture. And he said, Steve, he says, he's in charge of all sales, all revenue, right? He says, I attribute over 50% of the success of our business to our company culture.
Yeah.
Half. That's how important, because it's that much of an important of an environment to create, to attract and retain the best people. And that's one of the things I'm taking away from what you're saying here is we got to treat our people right. We got to give them the right environment for them to succeed, to collaborate as teams. That's what's going to keep long-term sustainable growth, right?
Yeah.
Here's the other thing. This is what I want you to reflect on. Another CMO, CSO team, they had gone in 3 years from 15 million in annual revenue to over 100 million, and are on track. They said in the next couple of years they hit 250 million. And they said every year, fundamentally, we change.
Yeah.
Still the same company, the same name, same basic products and services, but we're constantly evolving who we're selling to and how we're helping them, to the point that we're reinventing ourselves every year.
Yeah, exactly.
And you talked about innovation. When does innovation stop in a company?
Never does. And it's not necessarily, let's say, linked to technology innovation, because sometimes people believe innovation is only technical, tech. No, innovation is another way, let's say, to conduct, let's say, the current flow of the company. It's like this. And then in innovation, I think, must be, that's why the creative roles, especially with this, let's say, AI emergence, are key to sustain not just the professional life, the personal score, right? Because on the AI, will do everything, for us, or most of the tasks, blue collars, or people working on the offices, okay? And then what is left for the human, creativity, among others, right? Okay, and then this creativity, okay, must support the company on the journey. And, it's not like, always I make this typical comparison, like 40 years ago or 50, somebody got a degree in the university until pension. You don't need to read an additional book. A book, do you know what I mean? To recycle yourself. Now you finish your degree in the university, and then the year after, if you are not, let's say, innovating yourself, you are out of work. Completely crazy. It's like this. There is not comfort zone anymore. This is my personal opinion. At least you work for a public job, which of course, is different. But if you work in the private sector or as entrepreneur, you need to innovate every year, as you were said. Yeah.
I love the point on innovating yourself, right, versus innovation in the company, right?
Yeah.
If you're not learning, you're not adding to your creativity, the way that you think, the filter, the lens that you look at the world and success, You go stagnant, right? Oh, that's a really good point. You know, Daniel, we've covered a lot of territory here, but and our human brains, we can only retain so much information, right? Like two
Yeah.
or three things at a time. If you could summarize what you think from everything that we've talked about here, what's the most important takeaway that you want the audience to have from consuming this podcast?
I mean, we didn't talk in deep about that, but what I will say, taking into considering my experience, if you would like to pursue an idea and it's clear for you that you want to make it, go for it. Don't let the others, okay, tell you that, no, I mean, it's not feasible, it's not possible. Of course, something that, of course, has a fundament, in behind. And, what I mean is like sometimes somebody's working in corporate, they decide to move to pursue his or her own dream in a startup. No, come on. I mean, you are working full time in a place, you get your pay slip at the end of the month, the bonus, and so on. No, what I will do is like, of course, no, you have certain responsibilities. That's true, it's harder, but it's like you have clearly in mind your path of success with certain criteria and vision, go for it. This is, I can say this is encompassing all we were discussing, the startup journey, the company culture, the innovation, the scalable, because this is, of course, this is in addition. But where or when you start the journey, because you have an idea in mind, right? And as far as I can see, of course, there are different generations. There are people just even not finishing the school, and they have in mind to move on. I would like to do something different, because now there's the opportunity out there, and especially with the technologies, it's easier than before. And others, with certain background of experience, they decide to jump into and then build up from zero. Is again, what I will say is like, if you would like to pursue your dream or something, go for it. If you fail, you will learn. What is the worst will happen? To be back where you were is fine. I mean, you have been working for 15, 20 years on something, to try 1 or 2, 3 years because you have some savings, ideas, and then you can afford to do it, okay, in time, not just in money, go for it. If it's not working, it's not what you expected, back to where you were before. That's it. This is what I will say. Maybe it's a little bit out of the topic, but we are talking about the startups experience. Okay, and that's what I will say. Certain individuals that they will have in mind, to do and to develop an idea. Let's say.
I love it. The true passion of an entrepreneur. I can feel it coming through from you, right? So here's what I know. People are going to probably have questions. And would it be appropriate if I gave out a link to your LinkedIn profile that people could reach out to you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, my LinkedIn is very open. I am not the kind of, let's say, person that, okay, if you are not certain level, you cannot test me. I mean, for me, I am very open. As I said at the beginning of the conversation, I used to reply to everyone if it's taking sometimes, 1 or 2 weeks because I am quite busy lately, but, I am very open, to have a proper conversation and, of course, to satisfy the questions that anybody can have. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Daniel, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your passion. I'm a serial entrepreneur myself, so I'm like, I can feel it, coursing through my veins right now. Thank you for all of that today. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Steve. It was really appreciated, to stay here. Thank you very much.